BC has received an RFP from the Attorney General's office, and we'll start with an overview of the process. Jill Walters, First Assistant Reviser of Statutes. Jill, welcome to the committee.
Sir, and good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. This might look familiar to some of you because we've had RFPs before you for these sort of instances, but I just wanted to briefly go through the process for you for new members, any new members, and then those online who might be joining us. The Professional Services Sunshine Act was enacted in 2000 and covers professional services performed under contract with a state agency. The professional services include certified public accountants, attorneys, and consultants. And this memo will just talk about attorneys' legal services. We are receiving notice of this RFP pursuant to statute. So prior to entering into a contract for legal services, where the amount of attorney's fees is anticipated to be reasonably anticipated to exceed $1 million, the Director of Purchases shall submit the proposal to the Legislative Budget Committee. And then within 30 days after submission of the RFP, the LBC may hold a public hearing on the proposal, and then they'll issue a report to the Director of Purchases. The report shall include any proposed changes to the RFP suggested by the Legislative Budget Committee. The Director of Purchases is required to review the report and adopt a final RFP as the Director of Purchases deems appropriate. If the proposed RFP does not change contain the changes proposed by LBC, the Director of Purchases is required to submit the final RFP with a letter stating why such proposals were not adopted. The Director of Purchasers shall not release the final RFP until at least 10 days after the date of submission of the final RFP to LBC. And then at that point, if LBC makes no suggested changes or fails to report any suggested changes within 60 days, then the Director of Purchases may release the RFP. Then finally, after this RFP process takes place, the statute contemplates that the awarded contract for the legal services will be submitted to LBC, and then within 30 days of submission of that contract, again, LBC may hold a hearing and then shall issue a report noting any concerns. For on the proposal before you this morning, LBC was notified to Chairman Billinger that the Office of the Attorney General was issuing an RFP for legal services for the natural gas recovery litigation, and that such fees may reasonably exceed $1 million. So the committee has within 30 days to hold a hearing, and they are doing so right now. I'd be pleased to stand for any questions.
Questions for Jill? Seeing none. Thank you, Jill. Henry, sorry, Representative Hilgerson.
In the RFP, is there any criteria for the firm to be hired?
Sir, the Attorney General will be best person to answer that question.
Thank you.
And could I just also note, so before you have the letter that the procurement office had, you have the scope statement from the Attorney General. And then I will tell you that they also sent out the petition, and that will be in the record. It will be posted online for the record, but since it was 50 pages, I did not make copies for you, but they are available if needed, and they will be posted online. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Next, we'll have an overview of the RFP request. We'll have Dan Burrows, Chief Deputy Attorney General. Dan, welcome committee.
Good afternoon. The easiest thing I think would be to just give you a very quick overview of why we're asking for this, and then just leave it for any questions that you have. But ultimately, I think a lot of you are aware of the Winter Storm Uri situation that happened a couple of years ago. Attorney General Schmidt engaged a different firm to pursue the investigation. Pretty early in Attorney General Kovach's term, we filed a complaint against McCary Energy, alleging manipulation under the Commodities Exchange Act. The Attorney General, of course, moved forward with that because that was the contract that was in place. But the Attorney General, under the pre-existing statute, and I think it's KSA 75-710, of course, has the authority to determine who's going to represent the state of Kansas in any litigation. The Attorney General determined that he would rather go with a different firm. And so we have parted ways with the previous firm that was handling it in-house presently. But I think it's fair to say that we lack the in-house resources to handle litigation of this magnitude through the entire case. Right now, I think we are handling it just fine. We're in the early stages. I don't know if any of you are attorneys, but the early stages of litigation are relatively light, at least at the moment, and where we are. But we would like to get someone on board soon, because it'll take some time to get up to speed on the case. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Yes. Oh, sorry.
Representative Helgerson.
Was there any criteria to hire the firm? Also, was there any settlement with the previous firm that we had to make?
So let me address your first question first. Before I answer that, I think it's important to know that when you're hiring an attorney, there's a lot of intangibles that go into it. It's very difficult to say, for example, I want, like you would describe, like a building contract, for example. These are the precise specifications that I want. There's a lot of unknowns in litigation, particularly in this, where we feel like there's some additional investigation needs to be done. So we're not even certain what additional claims the state of Kansas might have, whether there might be other cases that we want to bring, et cetera, et cetera. And so our focus is primarily on a firm's experience and capacity to do the work that we have. So if you turn to, I apologize, the pages aren't numbered, but I believe it's the third page where it begins required RFP response information. There is some discussion there of precisely what the Attorney General would be asking the bidding firms to submit, the information that they would have to do. And there are some things in there that note, we would look favorably on this sort of thing. But even as to the fee, I believe the RFP leaves it open to numerous different fee arrangements. The previous RFP was very clear that it would be handled on a contingency basis. That was reasonable at the time because we didn't really know what's out there. But now that we have a filed case, we'd like to see other potential fee options that are out there. I should note as well, the previous firm was not terminated for cause. They are still free to bid under this RFP. I think the goal here is just to get a relationship that is more satisfactory to the current administration. Oh, sorry. Yes, you had a second question. The second question was whether there was a settlement with the prior firm. So no, I mean, I can say I'm limited in the number of questions I can ask because the termination has not been amicable. And I don't want to prejudice the state's position in any litigation that may result from it. What I can say is the previous contract was a contingency contract. And so it was their earning of a fee was contingent on any future recovery in the actual litigation. The litigation is in its early steps. There has been no recovery. If there were to be a recovery, it might be appropriate to consider whether they have a claim on the fee. But presently, we haven't paid the firm anything or come to any sort of agreement to make them go away either.
Representative Helgerson.
When we hired water litigators, we got experts from around the country. All right, is this a national search? And I'm assuming that there are several other states that have already farther along in the process. We're opening it up to anyone and everyone.
So yes, it is a national search, as I believe the previous one was. My understanding from the Department of Administration is you're allowed to also say, like, these are firms that we think have expertise. Can you please ask them if they're interested in bidding? And we have done that. I believe we've provided them with a name of 4 or 5 firms, but it's an open bidding process. any firm who's aware of it and interested can bid. We certainly don't have some, predetermined idea of who would be the best. We just want to, leave it open. But it is a national search as far as I'm aware. In fact, some of the firms that we have noted have experience in this are outside of Kansas. I would note, though, that I believe the statute asks us to consider whether a firm is a Kansas firm before we award the actual contract. Stepping back on other states have looked at this. Surprisingly, perhaps, we are the first and only state thus far to actually bring a claim. I have legal opinions on why that is and why we have brought the claim we brought, which I think is slightly different from what most of the other states have looked at. I'm not in a position that I can discuss those in a public matter just because it's pending litigation. But as far as I'm aware, we're the only state to bring any litigation from the winter storm thus far.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Dan. Secretary Adam Profit from the Department of Administration is also available for questions regarding the procurement. Does anyone have any questions for Adam? Seeing none. Should we just vote on it or what? No. Yeah. So I'll recognize you. I recognize Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move the adoption of the request for the RFP.
Have a motion, second by Representative Waymaster. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. That concludes our business and we are adjourned. Thank you.